Good day. This is the Corrupt True Crime Podcast, and I'm Charlie Cruz. Today's episode is about the mysterious skyjacker who leapt from a Boeing 727 into a raging storm with $200,000 and was never seen again. The man in seat 18C ordered a bourbon and soda, lit his third cigarette, and casually handed the flight attendant a note. She smiled politely. Passengers were always slipping phone numbers to stewardesses, and tucked it in her pocket without reading it. That's when he leaned forward and said something that would launch America's greatest aviation mystery. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." It's the day before Thanksgiving. Northwest Orient Flight 305 is 30 minutes from Seattle, and the calm, polite businessman in the dark suit and sunglasses is about to execute the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. He'll walk away with 200 grand strapped to his chest, parachute into a freezing rainstorm over the Pacific Northwest wilderness, and vanish so completely that 5 decades later, we still don't know if he survived the night or became the greatest escape artist in criminal history. They call him D.B. Cooper. And here's the beautiful irony. That's not even his real name. It's not even his fake name. The media got it wrong, and the mistake stuck. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind and see how a guy in a business suit pulled off what hundreds of FBI agents, military search teams, and amateur sleuths have been trying to solve for half a century. Here's what we know. The man who bought a $20 ticket that afternoon wasn't planning a quick hop to Seattle for turkey dinner. He was methodical, brilliant in his simplicity, and apparently willing to bet his life on a few critical pieces of aviation knowledge that most people didn't possess. First, he knew Boeing 727s had a unique rear air stair that could be lowered during flight. No other commercial aircraft had this feature. Second, he understood that Thanksgiving Eve flights would be half empty. Fewer witnesses, minimal complications. Third, he picked Portland to Seattle specifically. Short flight, positioned perfectly over millions of acres of dense wilderness. And fourth, this was the 70s. No metal detectors, no security screening, no ID checks. You could walk onto a plane with a briefcase full of anything, pay cash, give any name you wanted. So our man gave the name Dan Cooper, possibly borrowed from a French comic book character, a detail that spawned endless theories about his background. He was middle-aged, maybe late 40s, average height and build, dark hair, olive complexion, wore a dark suit, narrow black tie with a cheap pearl clip, and carried a briefcase. Absolutely unremarkable. The kind of guy you'd sit next to and forget before you landed. Except this guy had done his homework. When Florence Schaffner finally read that note, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. I want you to sit next to me. You are being hijacked." She looked into his briefcase and saw red cylinders, wires, a large battery. Whether it was real remains one of the mysteries. No bomb parts were ever recovered. But it looked convincing enough. His demands were specific and showed someone who understood both psychology and logistics. 200,000 in $20 bills, negotiable currency, not too bulky. 4 parachutes, 2 primary, 2 reserve. Here's the brilliance. Asking for 4 meant authorities couldn't give him sabotage shoots. They'd assume he might force hostages to jump with him. And he wanted a fuel truck ready in Seattle. No panic, no shouting. Just calm, professional demands delivered by a man sipping bourbon like he was discussing quarterly earnings. The FBI had 2 hours while the plane circled Seattle. They photographed every serial number on 10,000 $20 bills. They gathered parachutes from local skydiving operations. Northwest Orient's president authorized payment immediately. This was the era of cooperate and de-escalate. Nobody wanted a bomb going off at 30,000 feet. When Flight 305 landed at SeaTac, Cooper released all 36 passengers and 2 flight attendants in exchange for the money and parachutes. The man examined everything carefully, selected his equipment, and made his final demands for the flight to Mexico City. Or so he claimed. He wanted the plane at 10,000 feet, minimum safe airspeed, landing gear down, flaps at 15 degrees, cabin unpressurized, rear stairs deployed during flight. Every specification designed for one purpose, so he could jump. The crew, just the pilots, flight engineer, and 1 remaining flight attendant, took off from Seattle at 7:36. Cooper sent the stewardess to the cockpit, told her to close the door and keep it closed. She was the last person to see him alive. He tied the money bag to his body with parachute cord, strapped on his chute, and somewhere over the black wilderness of southwestern Washington, he did something that still seems impossible. More after our break.
My name is Tom Sachs. I'm an artist in New York City. For nearly 2 decades, I have been collaborating with Nike.
Nike running is for runners. Nike basketball is for basketball. Nike craft is for everyone else.
He walked down those rear stairs into a freezing rainstorm, with winds hitting 80 miles per hour, 0 visibility, 7-degree temperature at altitude, and jumped into the night. The crew felt the pressure change. A warning light indicated the stairs were deployed. The plane's nose pitched up slightly from the shift in weight and drag. That was 8:13 at night. When they landed in Reno and FBI agents stormed aboard, Cooper was gone. Just his clip-on tie, the tie clip, 8 cigarette butts, and 2 unused parachutes remained. Now here's where this gets fascinating and frustrating for everyone who's tried to solve it. Cooper had planned the hijacking brilliantly, but the jump itself, that's where the genius plan meets reality's harsh mathematics. He jumped in a business suit and loafers. No survival gear, no cold weather equipment. The temperature at ground level was below freezing. At altitude, it was brutal. He had 21 pounds of cash tied to him. He took a military-issue parachute he probably wasn't trained to use properly. And one of the parachutes he grabbed was actually a dummy training chute, sewn shut and non-functional, though he cut it open and used the bag to secure the money. So maybe he knew. The landing zone was dense Douglas fir forest, steep ravines, mountainous terrain, in total darkness. During a storm, even experienced paratroopers wouldn't attempt that jump. The FBI's conclusion from the start: he didn't survive, probably died on impact or shortly after from exposure and injuries. But here's the thing that's kept this mystery alive. They never found him. Not a trace. No body, no parachute, no evidence beyond what he left on that plane. The biggest manhunt in Pacific Northwest history turned up nothing. Hundreds of personnel, helicopters, ground teams searched an area roughly 28 miles long by 5 miles wide. That's a lot of wilderness, admittedly, but you'd think something would surface. For 9 years, nothing. Not a single marked bill entered circulation. $200,000 in cash with every serial number recorded, and nobody tried to spend it. That's remarkable restraint if he survived, or strong evidence he didn't. Then came the break that somehow made the mystery deeper. February of the following decade, a kid named Brian Ingram is digging a fire pit on a Columbia River beach near Vancouver, Washington. He unearths 3 packets of rotting $20 bills, $5,800. The serial numbers match Cooper's ransom money. Finally, physical evidence. Proof Cooper came down in that area, or at least his money did. The FBI descended on that beach like it was buried treasure. They searched. They dredged. They analyzed the sediment and water patterns, and the conclusions were inconclusive. The money was degraded, compressed, buried in sand. Scientists determined it probably arrived there a few years after the hijacking, possibly moved by a dredging operation that displaced sediment from upstream. The bills were miles downstream from the suspected jump zone. Did Cooper land in the water? Did he bury the money and it eroded into the river? Did someone else bury it? Nobody knows. That's all that's ever been found. Nearly $6,000 out of $200,000. The rest vanished as completely as the man who stole it. The FBI investigated over 800 suspects across 5 decades. They chased down deathbed confessions, family accusations, amateur theories. They used electron microscopes to analyze particles on Cooper's tie, found rare metals suggesting he worked in advanced manufacturing or aerospace. They extracted degraded DNA from the cigarette butts, though not enough for a definitive match. They created psychological profiles, consulted with military paratroopers, interviewed everyone who'd been on that plane dozens of times. One woman came forward claiming her uncle was Cooper, said he showed up at Thanksgiving dinner injured, that she'd overheard planning between him and her father. The FBI investigated. The timeline was intriguing. The suspect had military background, aviation knowledge, but he died years earlier, and they couldn't definitively connect him. Another strong suspect was a Northwest Orient employee with a grudge against the airline, parachute experience, and matching physical description. He became so convinced investigators would arrest him that he apparently took his own life. Still no proof. More after our break.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
A third was a recreational skydiver who matched the description perfectly. His family insisted it was him. Again, No definitive evidence. Theory after theory. Suspect after suspect. For 45 years, the FBI kept the case active. Then, they officially suspended the investigation. Not closed. Suspended. They'll still accept evidence if someone brings them a 99% match to Cooper's identity. So what happened? Did the brilliant hijacker die that night, body swallowed by the wilderness? Did he survive, live quietly on his score, never spending enough to attract attention? Did he have an accomplice with a vehicle waiting, drive away clean while authorities searched in vain? Here's what the evidence suggests. The jump was incredibly dangerous, borderline suicidal. Professional skydivers say the conditions alone, darkness, weather, speed, altitude, terrain, made survival unlikely. Add in his inappropriate clothing, probable lack of training, and the fact he took a dummy reserve chute, and the odds get worse. The fact that only a tiny fraction of the money ever surfaced, degraded and buried, suggests it wasn't spent because it couldn't be spent, because Cooper didn't survive to spend it. But then there's the nagging detail. No body, no parachute, no definitive evidence of death. That wilderness is vast and unforgiving. A body could lie in a ravine for centuries without discovery. The forest canopy is dense enough to hide wreckage indefinitely. If he landed in the wrong spot, and there were thousands of wrong spots, he'd simply be absorbed by the landscape. What we're left with is America's most elegant unsolved mystery. A man who walked onto a plane with nothing but a briefcase and nerve, pulled off a hijacking so audacious it changed aviation security forever, made impossible demands that were all met, and stepped off the back of that aircraft into legend. The case spawned the Cooper vane, an aerodynamic device that prevents the 727's rear stairs from being deployed during flight. It inspired 15 copycat hijackings before those modifications were complete. It revolutionized airport security, metal detectors, baggage screening, the entire infrastructure we consider normal today. Cooper's jump helped create all of it, and somewhere in southwestern Washington, maybe 8 feet underground on a Columbia River beach, maybe scattered across 100 square miles of forest floor, maybe buried under 50 years of vegetation in a ravine nobody's found yet, lies the answer to whether the man in seat 18C pulled off the perfect crime or executed the most spectacular failure in criminal history. The FBI's official position: he died. The physics say he couldn't have survived. The lack of spending money supports that conclusion, but there's that small, stubborn possibility, the one that's kept this case alive for 5 decades, that somewhere, someone lived out their years knowing they'd beaten the system completely, that they'd stepped off a plane into a storm and walked away clean. We'll probably never know, and honestly, that might be the most perfect ending possible. Not every mystery gets solved. Not every clever criminal gets caught. Sometimes, very rarely, someone pulls off something so audacious that even their fate becomes part of the legend. Cooper hijacked more than a plane that night. He hijacked certainty itself, turned a routine flight into an eternal question mark. The man gave a fake name, showed a bomb that might not have existed, parachuted into oblivion, and left us with nothing but theories, 3 packets of rotting money, and the greatest unsolved skyjacking in history. Whether he's a skeleton in the woods or a ghost who got away, he accomplished something remarkable. He disappeared so completely that we're still looking for him decades later. That's not heroism. It's not admirable. But it's undeniably fascinating. The mystery that refuses to die, carried out by a man who might have done exactly that, died, or might have pulled off the impossible. We're still searching for the answer, and the wilderness isn't telling. The thing about brilliant schemes is that they always end with handcuffs and bars, because no matter how clever you think you are, the house always wins. Now, if you enjoyed our show, tap that follow button and 5 stars in our ratings. Catch you next time.
Grab News. Thomas.